Hello, everyone. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live session, where we are diving into one of the most exciting and transformative topics in customer experience: how generative AI is redefining the economics of CX. I'm Sudha, and I lead the CX solutions and transformation at First Source, and I'll be your host for this insightful discussion. AI powered customer experience isn't just the future, it's happening now. But how do businesses harness AI's full potential while keeping the customers at the heart of every interaction? And that's exactly what we are here to discuss with an incredible panel of industry experts. Let's welcome our speakers. David is a seasoned expert in customer experience management and trust and safety, with over 25 years of experience in procurement, outsourcing, technology, and consulting. As a leader at Everest Group, he helps businesses navigate industry shifts, optimize outsourcing strategies, and also drive meaningful transformation. Passionate about insight driven action, David empowers organizations to not just adapt to change, but also stay ahead of it. Welcome, David. Chandak is a CX leader at Everest Group, and he helps enterprises, service providers, and tech vendors decode market trends and craft winning strategies. From M&A decisions to transforming contact center operations, his expertise has guided global brands in staying ahead of the curve. More than an industry analyst, Chandak actively shapes the CX landscape, driving boardroom strategies, competitive intelligence, and major investments in the CXM space. Welcome to you as well, Chandak. Ashish leads the CX and consulting at First Source. He drives next gen customer experience solutions and large scale transformation initiatives for us. He brings deep expertise in digital operations, content strategy, and AI driven CX. He's a thought leader and published author who is extremely, or I must say, extremely passionate about reimagining customer journeys. So, David, Chandak, and Ashish, thank you for joining us today. Together, we will dive into how AI is reshaping CX, striking the right balance between automation and human touch. And I would also love us to be looking into what's ahead in the next 3 to 5 years for CX. So let's get started. David, I'll probably start with you. How do you envision Gen AI, reshaping the balance between cost efficiency and even providing personalized, or I should say hyper personalized customer experiences in the next few years?
Yeah, thanks, Sudha. I think that when we look at this, we know that Gen AI is going to enable a much more personalized experience in a cost-effective way.
Absolutely.
I think for years, as you said, I've been doing this for 25 years now. I obviously started when I was very, very young, but no, I've been doing this for a long time. And for years, we've tried to really deliver that personalized experience, but it's really been hindered by the cost to do so because it's really expensive to be able to get to that level of care with a customer. But also, it takes a lot of time, which then is also expensive.
Yeah.
But also, you also don't have the data and the insights to really be able to deliver that personalized experience to the customer. So I think with technology as an enabler, and I think it's generative AI, but there's other technologies as well that we should be thinking about, then I think really we're going to be able to really deliver that personalized experience for customers by really understanding why they're calling, what they've bought from us, what they bought from us now, but also in the past, but also what experience that they've been receiving, and then what using the data and insights to really then personalize that experience, not only for the reason they're calling now, but what we're offering them in the future. So I definitely think that technology and Gen AI can really be that enabler to make that hyper personalized experience, but doing it in a cost effective way, because we know that technology will enable a lot of the contacts that customers find annoying today and are costly for the business, be able to either shorten them and or eliminate them, because we also know that the best call is the one that you don't take. It's the cheapest way of handling it, is not having to deal with the issue.
Absolutely.
So I think technology will definitely also have a big part to play in trying to automate and eliminate contacts, which then is actually going to enable enterprises to use that precious resource of money to invest in delivering a great experience. Because if you get rid of those mundane experiences, everyone's happier, the business isn't paying for it, the customer isn't impacted by it. So I
Yeah.
definitely think that the opportunity is there to use the technology as an enabler to get the insights and the data, to really drive that customer experience forward, but balance the books, because you're always challenged it when you're on the buyer side to try and do it in a cost effective way.
No, absolutely. And thank you for bringing these points, David. I know years back it was very difficult for us to bring in that data, but now, we have some amount of liberty in using that data and also the availability of data. And Ashish, from what we are hearing from David, and I think we are seeing this every day as well and mapping to, our world. Why do you think it's so relevant in today's world to be redefining the way we've been doing traditional CX?
So, Sudha, the road to personalization was paved with good intentions, but they didn't go anywhere because there was cost associated with getting good data, the ability to generate insights from that data, next best actions. David talked about those. And finally, the last mile.
Yeah.
Most places we have seen organizations start with the right intent. They would build personas, they would have journeys, but then lose momentum as the ROI associated to deliver the last mile was not established. The
True.
things are different now. The advent in technology, especially AI, has upended the cost benefit imbalance. It has created avenues which enable us to fundamentally change the way experience is delivered. It is not
Definitely.
about interventions, it is about a fundamental change. What started off as point solutions targeted to before the interaction, during the interaction, after the interaction kind of initiatives. Uh, there were intuitive IVR programs, agent assist solutions after transaction summary. I mean, people call summarization, but after transaction summarization, intelligent knowledge bases, etc., etc. They were giving incremental benefits, but they are all now morphing into something bigger. What generative
Yeah.
AI has done is, while these interventions remain, organizations are now looking at rebuilding the processes and journeys with an AI first mindset. Early days, but the change is here. I mean, and I would like to plug in here that that's one of the reasons why at First Source we have adopted UnBPO. We are challenging the traditional way of delivering customer experience and reimagining it for the new normal, because the new normal is very different from incremental change that we have seen till now.
No, absolutely. And I know, Ashish, we've been in so many conversation, and I think every day we are seeing more and more of the requests on what is it that, how do I bring in an AI first operating model into this, into a deal or into a structure? And even the clients are requesting more and more of that, right? And I think this is a good segue for us to, look at what pitfalls or challenges, while doing this journey, do enterprises face, especially while driving, Chanda, these kind of new gen initiatives, right? I would love to hear your views on this.
Yeah, I think the first and foremost challenge for most enterprises is they don't have a cohesive roadmap for the entire customer journey and how AI would going is going to fill those gaps, right? I think most
Hmm.
enterprises kind of are taking a siloed approach in which they might take it from a regional standpoint or maybe a business unit standpoint in which they are deploying technologies without a very consistent one organization roadmap. And also I think there is also lack of understanding about where the process inefficiencies lie and where are the areas in which operations can be transformed. So technology is not always technology, but also understanding of where the technology will be more applicable and where it would bring in more efficiencies versus others. I think the other one which both Ashish and David alluded to is the data part, and I think that's definitely the most important part. Traditionally it was the data didn't had that kind of quality as well as it was expensive. I think these kind of challenges still persist for a lot of enterprises in which they are not able to integrate data from different sources consistently. The standards of data are not that high. They are not able to report the kind of ROIs that they're able to generate from these technologies or they have generated in the past. So data still is a big problem for a lot of enterprises, and it's also about the governance of data, that how they can generate and use those data ethically in a right manner at the right places. And I think having said about everything, the final one is change management. Although
Hmm.
we think that for Gen AI, the change management aspect is still lesser as compared to other technologies in the past, because now the common general population is they know how to use these technologies. They have interacted with the chat GPTs of the world. So that's why the change management part is more easier for Gen AI, but it's still there. You need to think about the training of your agent population, how you communicate the deployment of AI, how you manage the pushbacks that employees would have around the deployment of new technologies, etc. So change management becomes very important, which a lot of enterprises are not looking at closely right now.
No, it's absolutely right, Chandak. And in fact, I think change management is one of the most important but always overlooked one.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
if you don't bring in the change management early on with your ACs and with the cultural alignment and even digital adoption strategies, right? It could be digital or otherwise as well. It becomes very difficult to drive and implement these initiatives. And we've seen this happen. And, that's why, we come in and we are like, let's look at the transformation side completely, whole end to end. So thanks for that, Chanda. I know, Ashish, you did bring about, on the scaling efficiency part in your first question. But how do we, ensure that it also drives empathetic and human-centered CX while Gen AI, and all of this is great, but, there's an human element there, right? So how do we bring that about in these areas?
Thanks, Sudha. You've hit a nerve here. You know, traditionally, BPO companies who delivered so-called customer experience have focused on skilling their people in what I would call the lowest minimum program that they should attend to take and answer a call. It hasn't gone beyond that. Training was one to many. Training was linear. Training was a step process where people would move in SOPs from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. uh, what got lost out in this, and it becomes extremely important to the point that Chandak was making about change management. Things are changing, and if you do not have those skills to adapt to that change, you will not be you will not succeed in the new normal, right?
True.
So apart from the basic skills required from a subject perspective, which is pertaining to the transaction, two very important things that have emerged are: one, cognitive ability, and the second is empathy. Because end of the day, those are the ones which are going to make a difference between a great transaction and an okay transaction.
Yeah,
The moment you are able to add those to the transaction, it becomes a wonderful transaction. It enhances customer experience to the next level. And there is
absolutely.
effort on in ensuring that we are identifying those skills in the humans that we deploy, because we are looking at an environment where full-time employees, part-time employees, gig workers, and agentic bots are going to coexist in the same environment. And for the humans, the thing that differentiates them and that's going to make them those stellar agents is going to be cognitive and empathetic skills. So it is extremely important, and it is a measure that is going to be it's going to define how customer experience is delivered going forward.
And Ashish,
Yeah.
maybe if I could just add to that, and sorry,
Go ahead,
sorry,
David.
Sudha, but I think this might be an
You go ahead.
interesting point, which is I totally agree with you, and I think that one of the challenges that we faced in the industry is looking for those additional skill sets. Sometimes can be more expensive or put talent out of price range. I think as we've seen in terms of the economics of this, if you can use the technology to improve efficiency, reduce AHT, reduce contact, then actually the best companies that we see in the industry, the buyers, are reinvesting that to get the right quality of agent. And we're having lots of contact or conversations with enterprises right now about the sources of talent as well. So not only what talent will we need in the future as Gen AI and other technologies can automate and eliminate and improve efficiency, what talent we need, but also where that talent's going to come from. But I think the best enterprises who are really taking experience seriously are looking to reinvest the savings they're making in the talent that they need, which brings that experience that you just talked about so well. Because I think that's what differentiates a company, is that experience that they invest in.
No, yeah, and whenever I have a discussion with, say, one of in the industry CX practitioner or an expert, they all say that AI is amazing, it's great, but sometimes we do feel that the empathy part is missing. right? And that human touch is kind of, lagging behind, right? And that's the fear that most of the CX leaders as well have, how to kind of, ensure that that balance as well is there. So with that question, Chandak, I would like to, ask you, so how do organizations or even a CX leader, right, take Gen AI as a strategic enabler? And sometimes in some organizations, CX is siloed, right? And in some, it's well merged. It's like a horizontal practice, right? But how do these organizations use Gen AI as a strategic enabler while keeping in the human, empathy part as well in the loop?
Yeah. Yeah, I think all of us kind of agree with the
Yeah,
same have the same opinion that the future would be human plus AI, right?
correct.
AI will definitely augment the work that human agents will be doing, although their skills will be evolving, and then the ability for AI to manage a lot of those transactions will evolve. I think all of us kind of have the same notion about the future, and that's why for I think for any CX leader, it will be important to not just look at AI as a single standalone tool, but as something which is closely embedded into their entire workflow. And I think if a CX leader is looking at an omni-channel support for their customer across different touch points, I think the notion for them should be how AI can be present at each of these touch points, and not just as a tool for an agent to just type out a question and get an answer from. It should be very cohesive to the work that people are doing in the contact
Mm,
centers for their customers. And I think at the end of the day, the ROI for AI and the economics that we are talking about should not
yeah.
obviously cost savings definitely would be a factor, but then it should evolve to overall business outcomes, right? How AI is able to generate new revenue for you, how AI is able to enhance the customer satisfaction scores, CSAT, FCR, etc. The matrices which generally a contact center is following, I think how AI is able to enhance those is definitely one of those factors that contact center
Yeah.
leaders should look at. And finally, I think the governance factors I've already mentioned how AI should be ethical, how it should be bias free, how the entire governance framework is structured within the contact center would definitely be very important in the coming years.
Sure. And I think it, to the points that you said, Chandak, it becomes more important that they look at CX as a complete, right?
Yeah,
Not just the contact center doing a service. That's not only
yeah,
CX, but it is,
yeah,
your design, your execution of the entire
yeah,
customer journey as such,
yeah.
right? And so, David, let me ask you again, right? What does redefining the economics of CX actually mean to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's quite a broad area, but for me, I think that it's really about, for years we've seen CX as being a cost center. So, well, customer service, delivering
Yeah,
experience was always a cost center, and there's a lot
absolutely.
of talk in the last few years about it's going to become a profit center. But actually, I think it's much bigger than that, and I think the businesses that are really adopting the right approach are the ones that actually see that delivering a great customer experience really helps to drive growth and customer retention, and that's the business metrics that people are looking for. And so I think there's always going to be that tension though between the customer experience and the cost. But I think as technology becomes more prevalent, it can ultimately reduce the cost to serve. And that cost to serve, which when we always have to remember though, technology does come with a cost in terms of to deploy, to maintain, software licensing. But as we think about how it can reduce the cost to serve, it gives the opportunity to balance the books and invest in the time and the effort to actually meet the customer where the customer wants to be, in the channel they want to be, in the way that they want to be met. And so I think that for me, the economics of CX needs to move from how do we do it as cheaply as possible, which probably was the mentality 5, 10 years ago, to not only how do we make it a little bit of a growth center, but actually how do we really use it to grow the business. And I see technology, I see the humans as being the real enablers to that. And then you layer on top of that the real importance that the CX leaders and service providers like First Source can bring in terms of really thinking about the service experience that they're delivering. And the
Hmm.
economics then becomes how do we use this investment to really drive and fast forward the business. So I think really the economics of CX become much more about how much do I invest to grow versus how do I do it as cheaply as possible. And I think that's really the emphasis that we would want to have on it, is leveraging technology, leveraging the humans to actually make the business grow quicker.
No, yeah. So, Ashish, to David's point, at First Source, we are already working with clients to embed AI into CX operations, and some elements of what he just spoke, we are doing in action as well, right? So, it'll be great, I thought, if you could just share some real world examples where AI has actually made a measurable impact.
So, 2 points there. So, the first point is you need to look at the journey end to end
Yeah,
and look at all the fundamentals of that journey. Typically, what has happened is we found point solutions, and then we expect that those point solutions are going to give
drive value. Yeah,
huge value, whereas
yeah,
they just are very incremental in nature. And when you do an ROI analysis, you actually come back and say, "Oh, you know what? It's been an overhead for me."
yeah,
If we are able to make a fundamental shift, and you take the total time and total cost to serve a customer as a
hmm,
metric, in today's day and world, we can easily assume that about 55 to 60% of that time and cost to serve can actually be replaced by technology in one shape or form, either through efficiencies or through things like agentic, etc., and then reinvest a portion of that into the 40% that is left with human or human aided work to give a
yeah,
richer experience. In that
hmm,
case, you are able to train the human better. You are able to give them the skills required to make the transaction better,
yeah,
have a much higher experience. I'll take a case in point. Uh, is a large media chain that we work with. They were looking to set up sales operations, and the first port of call, as it always is, was Philippines. It's a US based media company, and they asked us, where do you sell for media? Uh, we actually changed the entire equation for them. We took them to Derby in UK, which is our sales center of excellence. We do a lot of media sales work in Derby, and we said, you know what, per hour agent rate in Derby is actually more expensive, a lot more expensive than Philippines. But what we can do is, if we look at the process end to end, then your retention, your save, and your upsell can actually be delivered at a lower total cost of ownership from Derby. And imagine someone from Derby calling Middle America with that nice British accent or Midlands accent, and making the call, making the sale. It actually worked out. So you are using technology to create that efficiency, which is now allowing you to
hmm,
deliver the work from the best place possible and not the cheapest place possible, and with the
correct.
best agent possible and not with the cheapest agent possible. So
Yeah,
the economics are changing, and technology is enabling us to to deliver the promise on these economics.
yeah,
Ashish, can I just
and
pick up
it's
on that point actually, because you've hit on one of my pet topics and one of my pet peeves, if you like, really, which is also, I totally agree with you. And I think that what we also need to do is get sourcing professionals and procurement professionals to think differently about sourcing for CX as well, because I think that, and I was a sourcing professional in CX, I'm partly to blame. But too often, I think that we resort to, right, we need to buy something, we'll run an RFP. But as you said, really thinking about that total cost to serve gets ignored. But it's a hard thing to measure when you want to compare what did I pay last year to what am I going to pay next year. But I think that sourcing really do need to change the way they source. Not every sourcing professional. I know a lot of people are starting to embrace this, but we need to source in a different way to look at that total cost to really get the best solution. Because if we keep buying what we in the way we've always bought, we're going to keep getting what we've always got. And I think that really sourcing people do need to take that step forward as well.
You're completely right, David. And what we have proactively started doing is, even if the sourcing organization is constraining our responses with Excel spreadsheets, we always go out and give an alternate proposal and say, here is another view of the world. And try and give them a view that if you were to look at differently, this is also possible. Uh, it's actually started working in pockets.
Yeah, it will take time, but it will. I mean,
Yeah.
it definitely is going to pay off benefits.
Oh, it is taking time to your point, David. But then I think, to Ashish's point, we're seeing this ask and we are, kind of embedding these kind of views. And, I think we are at a stage where they're understanding that all of these needs to play into place together. It's like a perfect symphony, right? And that's how you can harness the power of AI as well, to what Chandak was mentioning, right? And I'm getting a lot of audience questions, so please keep this pouring in, and through our social media campaign as well. Earlier we had some, so I'm just going to plug in some of those questions. So to what Ashish's point was around churn reduction and NPS. So Chandak, there's one question where they're talking about how faster issue resolution is key to a customer experience. So what strategies have you seen help achieve this, and how does it influence churn or NPS in general?
Yeah, I think one thing with generative AI has definitely changed is the ability to give accurate pinpoint answer in both voice and
Yeah,
non-voice channels, right? So what we have seen is with AI being used to provide agents the support to answer questions on spot while they're taking calls. That kind of has reduced a lot of first call resolution, or has improved the
first
matrix of
call
first
is.
call
Yeah,
resolution, in which the customers are not compelled to call again and again, maybe in a couple of days, to ask clarifying questions. So the kind of points that agents are now able to cover is very clear, concise, and customers are able to definitely understand it very clearly. And then it has also impacted on the non-voice side, in which the scripts that are being generated by AI is more clearly understandable. It's quicker for agents to turn around emails, chats, etc., and it's easier to read for customers. So I think it has impacted both voice and non-voice channels at the same time. So issue resolution times have decreased, and the ability to solve the customer queries at the first contact has definitely improved, and is expected to improve much further in the coming days and years.
sure. Thank you, Chandak. And also, to me, as we spoke earlier, issue resolution isn't the only thing that the customer is looking for. I mean, we also as individuals are not just looking for that, right? We're looking for that experience end to end with whichever brand that we are interacting. Yeah. So, David, I would like to go back to you on one of the questions that came in, I think, earlier from one of our audience was, how do, given that CX is evolving so fast, thanks to AI, Gen AI, and so on, right? Um, there is something called the trust which comes in there, right? So, what strategies have you seen working best for scaling AI in CX while maintaining the trust factor as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. We haven't seen that many strategies working at scale, because I think that we're still seeing a lot of activity on the AI side, being on the pilots versus full scale deployment. But where we have seen it on deployment, I think that what we would see is that definitely starts with being about solving a business problem, and I'll talk about that later as well, I think, in another question that we'll have. But really, if you focus on the business problem, it gets the business trust. It's not just AI for the sake of AI. It's about doing it that way. I think it's about having the right governance framework in place. It's about having the right transparency in place. And then it goes back to what we said earlier as well, about having the right change management in place. So educating people about why you're doing this. It's not about threatening people's jobs. It's about enabling them. So even starting at the agent level, being really able to show this is how it's going to enable you to give a better customer experience. It's going to help you to eliminate the stuff that you hate doing, the real mundane work, but it's going to enable you to focus on your customer. I think it's about being clear with customers when they're engaging with you around where the technology is being used. So a whole host of things to establish that trust. But it's about transparency, it's about communication, and it's about having the governance in place as well.
And David, how do you think, industry regulations like around GDPR, HIPAA, and all that come into play here?
Yeah, I think that's the one. As a research firm, that's a question we get a lot, and we don't always have the greatest answers, I'll be totally honest. We don't know where regulation's going. I definitely think that one of the impacts we've seen is because people are a little bit concerned of where regulation may end up going in EMEA with the EU Data Act, etc. People are looking at a lot of the pilots and production work that we've seen is been in that agent assist versus directly impacting customers, because the regulation is easier to control, or you don't have to, if you have to roll back, you're not impacting the customer experience. So I definitely think that you have to take, as we know, you have to take into account all the regulations. I think it's about going into it with your eyes open, understanding that regulations may have an impact, and really being educated on it and understanding where is the technology, the AI, going to have an interaction with a customer? Where is it just providing data? What level of transparency do we need? Making sure everything's traceable and trackable as well.
Mhm.
So I think it's about understanding it. I've worked with a couple of organizations recently who are employing external support, really trying to make sure that they are covered as they possibly can be when it comes to regulation. So I think it's about taking it seriously, realizing that this is it could be a brand impacting issue if
Yeah.
it goes wrong, investing in it to get it right at the start, and but doing it on a use case by use case perspective, and again, not trying to roll the technology everywhere, but focusing on the use case, and then you can control any risk to that particular use case.
Absolutely. And taking these into consideration in the design stage itself so that, you can avoid any of those compliance misses as well, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the challenge is that you design it and then the regulations can change, but it's also
Yeah.
about having that
Yeah,
monitoring
true.
system and the
Yeah.
governance in place to make sure
Yeah.
that you're able to factor those in. If the law changes quickly or something happens and it hits the press, you can react quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's another interesting question, and Ashish, probably I'll throw this out to you. So, what are the potential risks of over reliance on Gen AI for customer interactions, and how can companies mitigate this risk?
So, see, the answer that Gen AI gives you for anything, and I'm just
Mm.
talking about Gen AI here, I'm not going to
Yeah.
agentic, is only as good as the language model on which it is working and the
Yeah.
data that is being fed into the language model, right? And what happens is your any kind of inaccuracies can actually get exponentially larger if you're relying only on that model to deliver an outcome. So
Hmm.
making sure that the data that you're using is sanitized, making sure that you're only using the foundational elements of the model to
Yeah.
work on the data that you already have and not exposing it to the big wide world. I mean, it's very nice to say, yeah, the agent can get an answer from internet, or Gen
Hmm.
AI can actually pull anything from anywhere and provide an answer. But even if 20% of the times that answer is inaccurate, you know, 20% of your transactions can actually
Yeah.
go, belly up.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
maintaining the sanctity of data, ensuring that the foundational models are established well, ensuring that the language models that you're using are very, very,
Hmm.
uh, what would I say? I wouldn't use the word sanitized, but trusted. That's why
Hmm.
we use the word rely, which is reliable AI. So that reliability of your AI is extremely important in situations like these. And then you have to be very careful. It looks very great. It sounds fancy, but that is one of the reasons why organizations are taking baby steps in adopting this, because they're concerned that
Hmm.
any misstep can do more damage to the brand than creating better experiences.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Can
Ashish.
I add a bit to this?
Go ahead,
What
Chandran.
Ashish
Please go
said.
ahead.
I think Ashish really touched upon a very important factor around
Hmm.
how our organizations are taking baby steps, right? And I also think along these steps, organizations need to understand that AI or Gen AI itself cannot resolve the all the issues that they have in their organization. The incremental steps that
Yeah.
they need to take is around understanding where the operational inefficiencies lies, and also bridge the gaps between different business units and departments. And one of the examples which just came to my mind when Ashish was speaking about it, we were talking to a large insurance firm recently, a few months back. The firm was taking the claims processing system as an example, and trying to leverage AI to make it more efficient, adopt wherever AI can give recommendations or suggestions about the claims processing system. And I think at the end of the day, what they found is AI was providing conflicting decisions versus human, because they still relied on the legacy approval workflow. They did not look at how their entire approval workflow was ongoing, and where are the steps which needs to be plugged first, then relied on AI to to look at what the decisions that AI is taking at the end of the day. So I think the steps that most organizations are taking are at very high level right now, and it should be more incremental, like Ashish was saying, and at the same time understanding where the gaps are first, plugging them up, and then looking at AI to turn it around for your customer support organization.
Thank you, Chandak. And actually, you answered the next question through this example as well, because the next question from the audience was, how can businesses create processes that reduce risk, right, while keeping this? So, thank you for that. So, that process design, as we are talking about,
Yeah.
is super critical. So, thanks for that. Yeah,
And Sudha,
and go
if
ahead.
I may come in, uh, see again, process definition needs the way we do process definition
Hmm,
also needs to go through a fundamental change.
absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah.
we cannot use the traditional methods of process mapping and then try and see how AI can make a difference in that. We need to look at every building block of that process differently and see what AI can do here, and then
Yeah.
build an AI first process. Uh, if, only after that we'll be able to see the kind of change that everyone is anticipating. Otherwise, we'll just keep looking at interventions,
Mm,
and the ROI will not be established, and people will keep saying that AI is death by a thousand pilots, which shouldn't be the case, because there is so much more power to the to the technology that can be used for a really remarkable customer experience. So the first step, fundamental step, most organizations need to take is unbundle their processes completely and look at them with an AI first prism or AI first lens, and only then will we see the amount of value that we want to see here.
And not the traditional way of just breaking down the process and saying XYZ interventions is what works here for us.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah. So, David, what are some of the trends, or how do you think the space is going to be evolving in the next 3 to 5 years, and what new opportunities could this create further for us?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that technology is still going to be a dominating factor over the next 3 to 5 years. We've obviously seen Gen AI in the last two. A lot of talk about agentic AI right now as an opportunity, language translation, all of those type of things as well. So I think technology will continue to be a key factor in as we think about it. What I would really hope, though, is as an industry, and it goes back to a point that Ashish was making earlier, we start to really think about the end-to-end experience that's delivered, and we forget about this is an interaction, and we've got to manage this in the call center. We start to think about the overall experience that customers are having from when they start interacting with your brand, whether it's through the marketing channels, through to when they look for service, sales, through to the aftercare. I think that what I would hope we see over the next 3 to 5 years, breakdown of this whole concept of front office and back office, and people start to design processes that really look at the end-to-end experience that a customer's having
Yeah.
to experience. And I think the technology can really help that by enabling the cost management and the cost reduction, so those investments can be made to really think about, okay, why? Because a point was made earlier actually, which was interesting, which was around obviously wanting to use technology, or customers want to engage with the technology. And I think that customers do in certain instances, but they also want to talk to humans in other instances. So really getting to that point of, where does a customer just want the issue to be resolved as simply as possible? They don't even want a human, or they don't need a human with empathy. But in this type of instance, they really need a high level of empathy, so you can put the right people in the right place. So I do think that in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see technology to continue to develop and to dominate. Although we do end up overestimating the impact of technology. I think if I think back 10, 15 years ago, everyone was predicting voice would be dead by now, and voice is still a very large portion of the business is done in outsourcing. And so I don't think it's going to completely dominate, but it will be a key area. But the one area I do hope would be really important is that people do start thinking about that service experience and thinking about the end-to-end customer experience, and using the technology and the humans to design the experience that really addresses that. That's where I would look. If we looked at 3 to 5 years out, I'm hoping we're talking about the experiences being delivered versus the technology that's having a part to play in siloed interactions.
Thank you for that. And, I'm hoping as well that, this is going to be more and more coming through from across, right? And the audience, please keep, plugging in these comments and questions, loving it. So I'm going to read. I think, Ashish, you will like this question. It's from Mark Wiggins. So, the question is, will voice of employee increase voice of customer as the availability of data? And will it also, empower more first time problem resolution and also bring in human in the loop, becoming more immersed into complex judgment based tasks?
Definitely it will. And that's, I
Yeah.
mean, I keep, like a broken record, I keep going back to
Yeah.
fundamentally, unbundling the process. I'll take a
Absolutely.
case in point. We work with a large education provider, and uh, they have a they do assessments. And when we looked at the entire assessment portfolios, people come and take tests. These are very high end global tests. Uh, a large sizable number of FTE, which always used to be
Hmm.
the count, or effort
Yeah.
was spent in test reschedules. When you
Yes.
fundamentally look at that process, uh, there is no reason for so much human involvement in tasks which almost have become industry utilities today. So, what we did was we said, okay, this is a great place to bring in AI. You can create a set of bots, and then you can have an orchestrated bot on top of that, which can actually allow people to reschedule. I mean, even in slightly complex situations like I need a free reschedule, so I need to submit a medical certificate, you can actually do it online. You can do it with agentic. You submit the certificate. There is an authorization bot which will authorize. It will then send it up the queue. The orchestrator bot will make the judgment, pass it on to the calendaring bot, and the calendaring bot will take that specific instance and provide you with options, and you can pick and choose the next test date. So the entire process, which used to take significant effort, can now be delivered through agentic. So, but
Absolutely.
what that has also done is, for the remainder of that process, which is uh, any anything that was escalated at the basis of that, or there was a test escalation, there was a score escalation, can now have humans who are more empowered and can actually take those decisions, with the customer, so that they can get their test results on time. So what used to take 2 to 3 weeks to resolve can now be resolved in a matter of 24 hours, because the humans who are doing that work are more empowered now. They have the right skills, and they have the right empathy, and they have the right logic and cognitive capabilities to actually resolve the problem. So you're not just solving one problem here, you're solving problems across the value chain by
Yeah.
build these building blocks that you bring into the value chain.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, Ashish and Mark. I hope this answered your question. And this is one of our favorite use cases for us. And you could see the passion that's coming out, because when we were designing this as well for this particular client, we kind of broke this down and to see from a design perspective where everything can come into play, right? And we actually brought in both the employee side and the customer side. In this case, a learner, right, where we brought all of this together to make this use case actually live for us. Yeah. So there's another interesting question from Pradeep, probably Chandak. You could probably pick this up. So with LLMs like DeepSeek coming into the picture, requiring far less GPUs, would the organizations be now inclined to explore on-prem options as well for deploying Gen AI?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting aspect. And in last 12
Yeah.
to 18 months, I think this space has evolved, and the fight for Gen AI is no longer just being fought on the software side, but it's also on the hardware side, right? And we have seen
Yeah.
the most valuable companies of the world coming up just by building hardware for AI, right? And I think what DeepSeek has done is made Gen AI a lot more affordable, and as well as available for small and mid-sized companies, and not just large companies who have the might to invest in these technologies. From an on-prem perspective, I kind of feel that the industry still is not at the point when people will start having AI solutions in their premises. It's more around, I think, people or maybe companies who are looking to invest. There, first of all, there will be more companies coming to the forefront who now have the ability to invest and budget for these technologies. And B, I think rather than on-prem, there would be a proliferation of private LLMs, which can be run with less computing power and can do more with less, basically, which will be like privately built, customized for the organization's specific goals and challenges. So I think it will be less about on-prem, more about the private LLMs that companies would be able to invest, and the more number of companies would be now looking at Gen AI. And I think that this ties well to the topic of this discussion: is the economics of Gen AI will be more affordable for a
Yeah.
lot of companies.
Yeah, and Chandak,
Yeah.
I think one of the other things, just to add to that, sorry, Sudho, is one of
No
the topics
problem.
we've been talking a lot about here at Everest Group is the whole topic of AI infusion. So instead of DeepSeek have made it much more or much easier to look at actually, can you take the data or can you take the AI to where the data is? What we were seeing before DeepSeek is because of the cost and the complexity, having to build data lakes and taking the data to where the AI is. And what we're seeing is it's a very early concept, but actually with all of the sort of democratization from an AI model perspective, actually, can you infuse AI into where the data is versus having to move the data? And that's going to free up a lot of the opportunities that can be used there. So I think that AI infusion topic is something that, if you're interested, watch out from an Everest Group perspective. We'll be doing more on that. But that's definitely where we're seeing it, is being able to put more AI in the business versus having to take the data and move it to somewhere central.
Yeah.
You're
And
absolutely
also
right
here,
here.
go ahead,
Sorry,
Ashish.
just
Go
one
ahead.
more point here. So late last year we launched the mortgage LLM. Right now, mortgage is a big business for us. We've been doing it forever. There's a lot of resident knowledge that we have created, and we have an understanding of how processes flow. So we felt that it's very key for us to build something like that. Now, are we? You know, we are not. Uh, we are not competing with the hyperscalers here by building large LLMs, but to Chandak's point,
Yeah.
topical LLMs which deal with specific industry groups and domains are going to be extremely prolific going forward, especially with technologies such as DeepSeek coming in, because it provides you to distill. So you don't need to spend the kind of GPUs that you used to spend earlier. You can actually create distillation methods and have nimble, smaller industry or domain specific LLMs which solve a particular problem or a set of problems associated with that domain. And we'll see a proliferation of that. We have invested in that. That's actually taken off well. And I think we will continue to do that for other industry groups where we operate.
Yeah. And keep the comments coming, everyone. So there is another question as well, and the question is around: is there a danger that the middle layer of the learning curve to inform high-end, complex, judgment-based making could be removed by Gen AI, with many knowledge workers left in a vacuum? David, would you like to touch base on this?
I was hoping you wouldn't be asking me that one. No, it's fine. I mean, I think there's always,
I mean, yeah,
whenever there's technology, there's always a risk that people get left
yeah,
behind. I mean, I think that what we're seeing is that as we're starting to talk to organizations about the skills that are needed, they're having to think about, okay, what skills will they need in the future? So they're going to have to prepare for the talent they need at the top end. There is going to be some reskilling that needs to be done of those in the middle that are going to be needed, but they're going to have to reskill. So yeah, there is a risk, right? I mean, I don't think we can ignore it, that there are going to be some people who are in the middle, knowledge workers today, who aren't necessarily going to be required in the role that they're in. But what we should be doing as an industry is looking at what skills do we need to give them for the future, and then how do we reskill them to get them to the places we're going to go? Because we do know, I mean, I think Satya Nadella recently talked about in 2000 there were 4 million contact center workers. There's now 17 million, despite all the technology out there. So the industry grows, the requirements grow, the need grows. So yeah, the work they're doing today is not necessarily going to be there, but there will be work to do in the future. And we need to be, as an industry, thinking about how we reskill those people.
Yeah, and how we reskill ourselves as well, which I keep reminding myself, because there's so many new things which are coming in every day that, okay, I've got to read, at least get to my 10 minutes of reading or learning a new thing, right? Yeah. So I think, Suraj has a question, and Ashish, I think this goes back to our use case on how will, all of this affect testing. I'm assuming it is for, I don't know, Suraj, if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming it's based on our use case that we discussed.
Oh, are we talking about testing as a business, or are we talking about
Yeah, I don't
test?
have that clarity from
Okay.
Suraj, but then, that's the question. But maybe we can take it from our use case as well, Ashish.
I'll answer both.
Yeah.
When it comes to uh, QA, if it is
Mm,
uh, if it is QA, then what AI does is enables us to do 100%
yeah.
QA, which is a no-brainer. All of us have started doing it, and that has actually helped experiences a lot, because now you don't have samples and samples within samples. You can actually, you know, QA the entire population. You can create the best transactions. You can create benchmarks. You have better data on
Yeah.
what is working, what is not working, and the overall quality of interactions will is actually improving as we go there. If it is testing as a business, I think it's going to be very remarkable, because there are two inflection points that happened to that business. One was the pandemic, and the second one was AI. What the pandemic did was, uh, created the requirement to deliver tests from non-traditional test centers, and
Mhm.
uh, what was being tried at that time was kind of expedited by the advent of AI, where you said, now I can actually do remote proctoring, I can do remote monitoring, I can do AI based interventions, I can you know create better tests, I can do better psychometrics, because I have a whole lot more data available on the test takers preferences, the way tests are taken, etc., etc., and utilize it to create a better learner experience.
Yeah.
So the industry is in for some very, very dynamic shift at the moment. uh,
True.
what is also happening is, it is getting more democratized.
Mhm.
So tests are getting created which are more in tune with the learner's requirements and their areas of expertise, etc. And it is almost a one-to-one kind of testing rather than a mass test which is given to everyone. Because we always used to assume that everyone learns at the same pace, and we've been told no,
Yeah.
a very hard no. So testing will also be very individual, very personalized, very, very specific for the requirements that are there. The same test, if four of us take, will be extremely different for all four of us. And it's not going to be based on predetermined samples which are created. It's going to be deterministic based on how we are doing those tests. So
Yeah.
AI is actually revolutionizing that entire industry.
No, sure. Thank you, Ashish. I know we have 7 minutes more, but then, um, my 14-year-old says this, Ashish, that, the next 2 years, she doesn't think that she'll be having the same test as her neighbor who sits next to her, or her, her friend, because, AI is anyways teaching her, and even the test that she does is going to be determined by AI. So maybe that's what's going to happen. So, Suraj, I hope Ashish answered your question as well. And, I just want maybe one last question to you, Chandak, right? So if you had to give a CX leader one piece of advice on leveraging Gen AI, what would that be?
I think the biggest piece that I have in mind is, and I think I've been talking about it since the first question itself, that I think AI should be, or Gen AI itself should be taken as an avenue for innovation, and not just a tool which will help human interact with customers, or maybe a tool which will maybe used at some bits and pieces in the overall operation. I think it should be looked at very holistically. I think the implementation should be very transparent, and at the end of the day, I think over the next few years, the most successful enterprises would be able to personalize their interactions with customers and personalize wherever they are touching the customers, and we predict what customers would want. And I think that's where GenAI is definitely going to be a game changer in the future.
Beautiful, Chandak. So thank you. So I think this was an amazing, insightful discussion, and I had, great fun and great learning. And to summarize, we all agreed that definitely data is the foundation, but sanitized, trusted data and how we look at processes needs to be different, right, in order to drive what's required with the definition of economics of CX, right? Unless we change that mindset and unless we change the way that we operate, and we've got to operate with an AI first operating model for us to be able to get to, measuring how Gen AI is driving CX initiatives effectively becomes very tough, right? So that brings us to the end of this insightful discussion. And I want to thank David, Chandak, and Ashish for sharing their expertise today. And of course, a big thank you to everyone who joined us. And if you found today's discussion valuable, you can follow First Source and Everest Group for more insights on AI and CX. And don't forget to rewatch or share this session with your network. And if you have more questions on any of the use cases or any of the discussion points, feel free to reach out to us, and I'm sure we'll be glad to answer them as well. So thank you, everyone, and see you again next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, Sudha.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.